I'm a 51 years old. I currently live in Maryland. I've been driving tractor trailer and, trucks. I've had my CDL license now for the past 10, 15 years. And excuse me, I used to be over the road. I used to work with Schneider, which is a trucking company. And I was out on the road maybe a month and a half, and then I would come back and spend time with my parents. And that got kind of old after a while. The older my parents were getting, the more I wanted to be close to them to help. So I basically came back to Maryland and got a local job, which is where I am now. And it's a local produce and seafood company out of Jessup, Maryland. I've been working there now for the past probably year and a half. And what we're responsible for doing is delivering produce and seafood and various items to different grocery stores and mom and pop stores. One of the stores that we actually delivered to was a place well known in Pennsylvania. It's like a Rutter's store is the name of it, Rutter's. It's kind of like your Wawa or 7-Eleven. It sells different items. Of course, it sells, the items that we bring in, which is the fresh fruits and vegetables. Well, because of the COVID, this madness, COVID virus that's going on, we were no longer allowed to deliver to the actual store. So we had to deliver to, it's a big distribution center, and that's in York, PA. Which brings me fast forward to to the event. I had a delivery at the Rutter's distribution in York, PA. And excuse me, I kind of wrote this stuff down so I wouldn't forget, where I was and times and so forth. It was approximately 9:35 Tuesday on the 21st. I believe that was the date, the 21st. And again, I was coming from Jessup, Maryland, on my way to York, PA. I was traveling on the road. It's called Farm Trail Road, which it says here is Route 38. It's kind of a country farmish type road. You see the trees, you see the different animals and so forth and so on. Well, as I was driving on 238, I was coming up on this bridge. And again, I'm just looking, I'm looking to the left and the right, paying attention to what's in front of me. And at the time, there really wasn't a lot of traffic that was traveling, during this morning. So excuse me. So as I was coming up on this bridge, I looked over to my right, and from a distance, all I saw was I would say that I thought it was a bear because, again, it was just something black that was on the side of the road. And what I mean by side of the road, as I was crossing over the bridge, it was probably 30 to 35 yards out. My first thought is, oh my God, look at this bear. And I've never seen a bear in my life other than on television. So I'm excited for that in general. I'm like, oh my God, look at this thing. And it was kind of the way it was positioned. It had its back towards the bridge. So I couldn't make out any details other than it was something big and something black. My mindset is, well, it's got to be a bear. So what I did was, as I crossed over the bridge, I stopped like 20 yards past the bridge. And I said, oh my God, I've got to get out and see this. I want to see what this is, again, thinking it's a bear. Silly me. I didn't think to grab my phone because I was so excited. I walked about 10 yards from the truck and I said, oh, well, let me go back and get my phone. And then I thought, well, Wes, you know what? If I go here, it might disappear. So at least I'll get to see it. So I kept going and I walked up on the bridge. And as I got up on the bridge and I'm looking at this thing still with its back turned to me, another car pulled over. Of course, I won't give his name, but another gentleman had pulled over and he, I guess he was like right behind my truck on the side. And he kind of starts trotting to me and says, hey, did you see that? Did you see that? And I'm telling him, it's right here. Look, it's right here. So as he comes up, we're standing side by side. He's on my left shoulder and we're both holding onto the rail, looking over the railing. And as we're looking at this thing, he starts to say, what is that? Kind of loud. And again, I'm not gonna curse. There were curse words being used.
Yeah.
And he's saying, what is that? And I'm like, is that a bear? We're still trying to get, You know how you kind of squint in to see if if your eyes are seeing what you think you're seeing. We're both saying, what is that? When it turned first, it was already squatted, and it kind of turned at, if you can imagine a clock, it kind of turned to 1 o'clock, and his words the gentleman's words were, "That's no effing bear." And I think I tried to describe this to you when I spoke with you earlier, Wes. When you walk, it's almost like when you walk up on someone and they're caught, and it's almost like, oh, damn, okay, you got me. That's what this thing's body language was as it started standing up. Now, again, even though the gentleman to my left is saying, that's no bear, that's no bear, I'm saying, in my mind, what else could it be? It has to be a bear. This thing starts to stand. It stands up, and I'm looking at its legs, and I'm looking at its arms. Arms are huge. His arms were huge. So as he starts to stand up, the bottom of his fingers never moved. And what I mean by that is, if you squat down as a human being, and once you start standing up, even as a bear, if you start standing up, at some point in time, your hands are going to follow. Your arms, your hands are going to follow. This thing never did. It stayed right below right near the kneecaps. When this thing stood up, it was absolutely massive. Never in my life have I ever seen something that big. I've never, and it was kind of a whoa moment, like, whoa, wait a minute. I knew then it wasn't a bear, but in my mind, I can't think of anything else. I'm like, is this somebody playing jokes? Is this a guy in a suit? When it stood full tilt, when it stood up fully, I'm taking a guess, 8.5 foot, massive shoulders. Shoulders looked like they were about 3.5, maybe 4 feet across. I mean, just absolutely massive. And I noticed there was something in its left hand. What I initially thought may have been a dog, I believe it was a goat, because that's the only thing that was kind of, again, it was a medium-sized animal. So if it wasn't a goat, it was a dog. But I'm thinking more along the lines of a goat. And its neck looked like it was broken. It was deceased. As you're looking at the back of this thing, whatever this tall thing was, you can see it. The goat in his left hand, his neck was covering his fingers. It's almost like his neck was broken, if I'm explaining that correctly.
Yeah.
Or if I'm describing it correctly. So anyway, this guy next to me, I'm almost in shock. I'm kind of like, okay, what is this thing? What is it going to do? The guy next to me, he starts to yell, he's still saying the same, that's no effing bear. That's no effing bear. When he said that, this thing turned again. Now, initially it was at like 1 o'clock. After it stood up, it turned to 2 o'clock. It looked at us in a freakish, Wes, I can't even describe the movement of this. It was just a freakish look at us. When it looked back over its right shoulder, it gave a little like a huff. I can't do it. I can't make the sound that this thing made, but it was kind of like a bull, but just louder and more intense. And it turned towards us with the thing still in its left hand, whatever that thing was. It balled up its fist, and it slammed its right fist on the ground into the water and the mud. And at that point, I think I told you when I spoke with you before that there's no shame in me saying this, but I literally urinated on myself because I was not prepared for any of this. And when it did that, it completely scared me. I was absolutely shocked. I didn't know, okay, is this thing going to charge us? First of all, what is this thing? I knew that it definitely was not a bear. It was not an ape. The face was looking more, I believe I sent you a photo of it because I tried to do a little research. It kind of resembled a Neanderthal man. The only difference is it was a lot more hair, a lot more hair on the head. It was kind of matted. There was no smell. There was no sounds other than the hoofing of the nose or whatever that grunt sound that it made. But the freakish thing was, as we're sitting there looking at this thing, I'm in shock. This guy next to me, he's going crazy. Once it put its fist into the ground, Wes, it squatted in a way that I think I explained to you before. I can't explain the movement of this thing. The only way I could describe it is if you were actually going to drop down and do, as a human, you're going to drop down and do push-ups, and you take your left arm and your right arm and you put them out to the side and you put your legs as far out as you can, almost looking like an X, if that makes any sense, or a sideways H. I'm trying to figure out the best way to describe the way this thing looked. It dropped down almost like a transformer. And I know that sounds crazy, but I can't think of anything else that this thing looked like. As it dropped down and began to look like a 8.5, 9-foot spider, this thing took off. I mean, with whatever this thing was tucked under its arm, it took off through the water, through the woods. Right before that happened, I'm sorry, I was getting ahead of myself. Right before that happened, I'm trying to tell the guy, get your phone, use an explicit word. You get your phone. We need a picture. Get a picture, get your phone. Just as he starts to get his phone, it was almost like this thing hurt us, as if to say, okay, I've got to get out of here. And when it dropped, Wes, this thing, the only way I could describe it is like a jet, a cheetah on steroids. It took off, and I've never seen anything that big move that fast. Never have I ever seen anything like that, which is why it kind of put me in I'm trying to find the best. I was just kind of stunned. Again, your mind is not meant to see certain things in life, and I honestly feel that was something that I wasn't meant to see, that my body just wasn't prepared for. My mind, my system, whatever you want to call it. So fast forward to the time when it just bolted, it jetted. The gentleman next to me decides he wants to, call the police and let them know what was going on, let them know that there was something, running loose out here. We can't explain what it is, blah, blah, blah. But the funny thing is, he called the county. Yeah, I guess it was the York County Police, but they didn't come out. It was the state trooper that came out. And when the state trooper came out, he got he didn't get our information. He got what happened. He asked the other gentleman first, what did you see? Can you describe it? And then when he asked me, I told him exactly, what I saw. And he was like, well, yeah, we do have a lot of, reported bears in this area. And, the other gentleman we looked at each other and we said, that wasn't a bear. I know what a bear looks like. Granted, I've never seen one in person up close, but if you're going to tell me that bears have arms that are as long as that go down to their calves, I don't think so. This thing was massive. I've never even seen a bear on TV this big. This thing was extremely massive. And there was some moss. I remember telling him just how big this thing was. There was some moss on a tree, moss or whatever type of growth that was on a tree. And I told him, if you look at that growth, that's how tall, that's how massive this thing was. And when he looked at it, he said, well, so you're telling me this thing was about 8? It looks like it's about 9 foot tall. I said, it was about 8.5 foot tall. And I remember him taking his hat off and kind of wiping his brow. And the next thing he said was, oh, you guys aren't from around here, huh? And to me, that didn't fit to me. Again, I don't want to go the whole conspiracy theory. That just didn't fit for him to say something like that. What does that have to do with anything? The gentleman that was with me was saying, well, I'm from Lancaster. He said, and I've been hunting since I was knee high to a grasshopper. He said, and I've never in my life seen anything like that. He said, that was no effing bear.